I just kept pushing it down, focusing on other people. And now I've had time to like sit back and think like, gosh, why do I keep wanting jobs that deal with the military or with veterans or with military spouses? It's because I don't want to leave that area. That's where I feel most comfortable.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Veteran CEO Magazine, where veterans lead the way. I'm Jay Hernandez, and today my guest is Kelly Freel. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you for being here. Kelly, in your former role in the military, you were a master at arms with a specialty in the Criminal Investigation Division, RSI for NCIS while on active duty. And then in your civilian roles, you were a former police officer, a veteran outreach coordinator for the recovery from substance and alcohol throughout the state of Virginia. And in your current role, you are the ambassador for Virginia Veterans Network for the Virginia Department of Veterans Services. Created by veterans for veterans, the Virginia Veterans Network is a free digital portal offering resources, programs, and services for Virginia military veterans, transitioning service members, and their families. Kelly, you've done a lot.
That's pretty much how I've always operated. But it sounds like a lot, but I have it all pretty well organized, and I have my day planned out, and I try to make the best of each day and be able to give back to my community.
Well, I'm just so thankful that you've taken the time to talk with us at VCEO today about supporting veterans in career transition. As you know, with VCEO interviews, we start each one with a 6-word challenge to talk about your personal transition out of the military into civilian life. What are those today?
They have expectations, mindset, resources, camaraderie, loss, and mission.
So, expectations. Let's reflect a little bit on your experiences with your expectations and understanding that as veterans, as service members go through career transition, they might reach a point where their transition hasn't met their expectations, or maybe they've lost all expectations entirely. Talk to us a
Well,
little bit about your transition and what that was like for your expectations.
I can only speak to mine, but I'm speaking to friends as well, whether they're officers or enlisted, if they've done 20 something years or if they've only done under 10, everybody's expectations are so different when they want to get out of the military. I mean, with the officer corps friends, they have a degree and they're able to move on to something probably more in the corporate area, something a little bit, with higher pay and higher everything. With the military, if they get out under 20 years and they're not on retirement, and they just don't like the military lifestyle. A lot of them think the grass is greener on the other side. And one of the things that I've learned, it's kind of like an institution after 10 years. You have a mindset, you have all the resources on base, you have your housing covered, you have your paycheck, you have your medical covered, you have your ability to take care of your family. But a lot of military don't realize, like, when they get out, the cost of living is completely different. The job status, just learning how, I would like to say transform, but transition from a military mindset to a civilian mindset, it doesn't come overnight. And there's a lot of challenges that happen while you're going through it, ones we don't expect. The reality of separating from the military is that it often involves a jarring shift in identity and prompting serious questions about career, family, sense of belonging. These issues can arise before or long after separation. And that is so true, because I got out of the military. I was dual military overseas, got out of the military. The very next day after I left, I was still overseas in the same base location, but no more uniform. And I started homeschooling my oldest child. And I didn't have time to really think about what I was doing from military. I was focusing on my child, right? But I had a lot of stuff that I did not deal with because I was focused on my child. Here we are, 25 years later, four kids homeschooled from the beginning to end. I have 6 months left on my last one, and she's out of the house as well. And, I look back on a lot of stuff I did not deal with when it came to the transition portion. I just kept pushing it down, focusing on other people. And now I've had time to like sit back and think like, gosh, why do I keep wanting jobs that deal with the military or with veterans or with military spouses? It's because I don't want to leave that area. That's where I feel most comfortable.
There's so many different people that you've worked with outside of your career in the military, helping them with career transition from all sorts of different backgrounds. So I imagine you've probably come across folks who are like, well, I didn't need to adjust my expectation because I was a Navy SEAL, or I was a fighter pilot, or EOD, or people who do all sorts of crazy things. It sounds like one of those things that's pretty universal across the different career fields is everybody goes through this. So everybody needs to intertransition thinking about that. Is that correct? Or can you kind of expand on that?
Yeah, I was married to the special ops community for about 20 years. So I can attest to the treatment that they get while they're in. They are treated, and rightfully so, with high regard. All the training and all the money that the government puts into them and all of the really awesome things that they do for our country, and doing things that most people can't do because they're the elite. There is this mindset and a fan club and all the things that come with that when you're active duty, right? And then you decide to retire. And then the next day, you're no longer that identity, right? You're a veteran or a Navy SEAL still, or maybe EOD still, but you're a veteran Navy EOD. And now what do you plan to do for a living, And, a lot of them joke about wanting to hand out basketballs at the rec center or things like that. But a lot of times our military that have been in severe combat situations, which doing veteran outreach, we come across this a lot. They don't know that they have PTS, post-traumatic stress. They don't know that they have TBI. And sometimes a lot of them skip. From the last couple roundtables I've been to, we've been told that about 30% of our Virginia active duty actually attend TAP seminars. So they don't even know what the benefits that they're eligible for, which means that mental health that they need or the TBI scans that they need, they don't know that they're eligible for those things, right? And then they start to kind of fall apart little by little in civilian life, not understanding where it's coming from, or maybe they don't understand the identity shift, or they start getting headaches or all the things, right? And one of the things that we try to do with outreach is share these resources with everybody, because sometimes it's 6 to 10 months before they realize or get a diagnosis with PTS or TBI, or by then there's a sobriety issue too, because a lot of times alcohol and drug use are used to band-aid those feelings, the things that they haven't dealt with. A lot of times the emotional intelligence is not there because they're taught mission first. Emotions are not part of that deal. So there's just a lot of things that start to bubble up because of the pressure of civilian life. One of the things I learned about with veteran outreach is there's so many mental health units out there with veterans that are actually therapists or veterans working in the TBI field. So they understand the stuff that is going on with these guys and with these women. And it's really important that you find a place where they have peer recovery support that has veterans working in those fields. It's just easier for them to open up, to be able to share the difficulties and challenges they're having, because they feel regular civilians might not understand some of the stuff they have, because it is a different level of PTS.
We try to avoid stereotyping here, but I do want to address a serious issue that does exist within the veteran community, and that can be substance abuse issues, that can be alcoholism. And you also have experience supporting veterans with addiction. So should service members go into career transition with that expectation that they might run into challenges with addiction down the line, just kind of understanding that they're exposed to things while they're in the military, or they might be trying to band-aid that? But by having that expectation, hopefully that sets them up for finding the resources to help them heal and transform.
Yeah, I don't want to generalize all military, because I've known several military people that don't drink alcohol or do drugs of any kind. But in the military, camaraderie is kind of formed around events, drinking events, and going out and having fun starting at a pretty young age. Over time, that camaraderie grows at each duty station that you go to, and the friends that you build over the time that you're in. But then we also have the combat veterans that are out there and they get injured and then they're put on pain medications, right? And it's completely legal. But then how are they to be weaned off, or is the pain ever going to stop? So we have legitimate reasons for people becoming addicted to pain medications. And then also too, not knowingly knowing that you have PTS or TBI when you leave the military. And you notice that if you have a couple drinks, you feel a little better, but just temporarily, and then you have a few more and you feel a little better again. But then by the time a year or two rolls around and you're band-aiding it, now you have a sobriety issue, right? So it's so different with everybody and everybody's backgrounds and experiences. Not everybody does combat, but there's different forms of PTS throughout your career that have nothing to do with combat. We have a lot of women veteran issues that are popping up through the VA for, and I'm not saying every female or any, I'm not generalizing, but When I went to do my VA questionnaire, they asked about sexual assault or sexual harassment. That's like a new thing on the VA claiming. And I went to the Women's Veterans Ceremony in Richmond this past year in February. One of our governors, our Lieutenant Governor Sears, actually hosted that one. She's a former Marine. She even spoke about the rising numbers of women with sexual assaults that are coming out finally that haven't been talking about it because they're scared. So we have all different forms of PTS in the military. We have the combat, we have the non-combat, we have, the gender related, we have all kinds of different stuff. So I would just say that when people drink, they all have their own reasons. However, I do feel like even though there's a zero tolerance with drugs and alcohol in the military, with it, incidents, it's still, easy to really get, and a lot of people still really do it.
And I think that the takeaway from here is the expectation when getting out of the military is there's a lot to process. What recommendations do you have for veterans to just help them set their expectations? Maybe it's resources to point them to, maybe it's amount of time before they get out to start planning. What kind of things would you recommend service members, veterans, and their families do as they're preparing to go through that transition, or maybe they've already transitioned, but just to help them with that expectation part?
What I would say, number one, is if you can go through TAPS, it's a head start. Not everything, but it's definitely a head start. What I would do after that is I would first say, hey, contact your Department of Veteran Services in the state that you're getting out, because they have a whole slew of that state's veteran resources. And it's really important. Like for the state of Virginia, we have everything from legal assistance, first month's, last month's rent. We can do housing, food, shelter, clothing, job assistance, interviewing assistance, college benefits, how to file for a VA claim. We have people that can help you with all the stuff, right? A lot of times people get out of the military and they don't know that the VA is even a thing for them. But everybody that gets out can apply for those. And that's a really important thing, especially today, because there's a lot of things we were exposed to that we don't know we were exposed to in certain places that we're at. There's all kinds of different stressors out there, right? So that would be number one for me. I would also say, if you're a veteran of a foreign war, join the VFW. Huge slew of resources. I'm a VFW member. American Legion, I'm an American Legion member as well. Both of them supply tons of resources to our veterans while they're in transition as well. And then you have a buddy system as well. Do not isolate yourself from the military, the veteran community. Anything that you can do to stay kind of somewhat tied into it, even if you can, go hang out with a friend that you served with, check in with them on a phone call, a Zoom, or whatever. Try to make sure you have a buddy system and a buddy check-in place.
All very good points on resources and helping veterans set their expectations with career transition. So let's get into the second word here. We're talking about mindset. You provided this word, and I'm thinking a lot about how service members, they need to adjust their mindset when they get out. And that relates very closely to expectations. But what are some of the things that you face that you've seen that are common for veterans to adjust to?
I know for me, my mindset is still the same when I was in the military as it is for whatever I do in the civilian sector, but I have to adjust a few things. It's normal if things feel out of whack, if there's uncertainty, if you feel a little bit lonely, or if you don't feel understood. That's all normal when you go from one life to a different lifestyle. And these are just things that you have to kind of embrace. And I know a big military term a lot of us use in probably all the branches is embrace the suck. Once you get to a place where you can embrace that and then grow from it, that is where the transformation happens, where you don't leave behind what you've learned, but you add on some new skills in civilian life that help you move forward and grow from that. It's basically a different mission. It's a mindset, but it's a mission mindset. So instead of saying, oh my gosh, I'm no longer military, I'm a civilian now, I would say I'm former military and now I am also civilian. So you use both of them, right? And I think that you bring a lot to the table when you bring all that training, the military mindset, trying to do everything at your best effort, giving it 110%. I know I like to give everything 110%, and I do get down on myself if I'm incapable of doing that. So time management is huge for me. If I can do time management and set my day. So that's a military mindset that I have, that I transition into military, civilian life. And it does help me at my job, because instead of thinking small, I think big. And I try to tell veterans, hey, don't give up what you've learned, because there's a lot of things that you learned that are definitely beneficial to a civilian corporate office. Now, There is definitely some transition issues when it comes to vocabulary, having to learn not to be rough around the edges, to kind of polish how you speak to people. Also, to you have like, I know we're going to be moving into AI soon, but ChatGPT really does help with that. But if I'm upset with a coworker or a situation in the military, we'd be a little bit rough about that situation, be very direct and in some ways sometimes hurtful in how we would handle that, right? But in civilian life, you can't do that. So you have to learn how to transform your words into corporate speak or business speak or whatever you're in. It could be the
Yeah.
trades, whatever. But there are ways to do that. There's mentors and coaches, even at the Department of Veteran Services that I've been sharing with you guys. We have them in nonprofit organizations that are specifically helping veterans just with transition and transformation. So there's lots of tools out there that veterans can utilize as soon as they get out that will help them learn how to do that. And also too, there's mentorships like ACP, American Corporate Partners. I utilize them. They'll assign you a corporate person for a whole year to guide you and teach you the ways of that society. They'll help you with your resume. They'll help you answer interviewing questions so you can learn how to be better polished for that. If you have questions about how civilian life operates in whatever specific field you want to get into, they'll help you with that. And they're kind of like a lifeline, almost like a coach. They helped me tremendously. I was attached to this amazing executive secretary in New York City. And at first I was like, well, I'm not applying to secretarial jobs, but you know what I found out? She knew everything that I needed to know in order to move into corporate society. She was kind of the backbone of that entire company. So I'm very grateful for her because she shared a lot of knowledge and she helped polish me and move me in that direction.
Let's transition a little bit out of mindset. And I want to focus on your third word now. We're talking about resources. And this is one of those areas where you've got so much of a background on different types of resources to helping service members, veterans, and their families as they go through transition. So let's start to unpack. What are some of the resources that you really recommend? What are some resources that you used or maybe you didn't use, but you wish you could have used at the time to help out this community as they're going through this career transition?
Well, I would like to talk about AI for a minute. And I know there's a lot of negatives and positives, and it's a new thing, just like all new things, even the microwave. When they first come out, there's like all this talk about, I don't like this or I like this. And then we have legal issues right now. They're trying to determine what laws they can apply to AI because there's copyright issues. There's what they can use against you in the court of law, right? But if you use it for transformation, it is a positive thing, especially when you're trying to learn corporate speak. You're going from a military mindset, military verbal, and the way that some of us can come off is a little rough around the edges. We go from military life into civilian life. So for me, I use ChatGPT to determine how I should say something or how I should email something or how I should deal with a disgruntled person. Could be in business. If somebody's unhappy with something, you can't make everybody happy. So you, at some point, you're going to have to connect with somebody in a difficult conversation. And the way that I might say it in the military is not how I should be saying it now. So I love how I could put in something like, I would say, ChatGPT, help me understand how I should verbalize this to my coworker. I'm upset with the way that they're speaking to me about a specific thing. And I have an opinion, which I'd like to share, but they're not hearing me. And it'll come out and it'll spit out how you can go and approach that coworker in a very kind manner with open communication, open-mindedness, and be able to start a conversation without using cuss words.
And I just want to point something out to the listeners who maybe aren't in the military or veteran community. In my experience, and I think yours is too, a lot of that rough around the edges speak is because you're talking about missions where time is of the essence. You're trying to move fast. You don't have time to really put the introductions and have the slow bit into something. Something has to get done. It has to get done now, and we need to move on it quickly. So that's a lot of where it comes from. What you're talking about, you can use AI to basically say, here's what I want to say. Here's the background to it. Help me say it. Help me translate it this way to be professional.
Help me sound professional. Help me to sound empathetic. because a lot of times we're in the military, depending on how long you've been in, you lose the sound of empathy. You might have empathy internally, but it doesn't come out like you do. And then also too, it helps me with dealing with children. Like if you're a parent, it's so great to be able to have this. I mean, it's not an 8-ball or anything, but it's kind of nice to have this place where you can go ask a question and kind of get some feedback from the internet about how you should handle a situation. I mean, we didn't have that when my kids were born, but I have that now with teens and adult, children now. And it's great because I feel like I have a little bit of knowledge when I go to speak to them now, and you can use it in corporate society. You can use it in relationships. You can use it just about anywhere.
I've used it to help me with my calendar and scheduling when I have many competing priorities. But it's also nice to be able to say, here's the different things that I need to get done. And I may not take the exact calendar for it, but it's just nice to have like some different input. It's email writing, it's scheduling. There's lots of different areas.
There's another one that's really helpful for veterans, which I started learning to do on my own, is you take your resume and you input it into ChatGPT along with the job that you're applying for, and maybe your DD-214 as well. And then you say, okay, tell me how my experience is going to benefit this company. And it'll spit out all of your experience and how, so that way when you're going through the interview process, you print that out, you'll have those notes handy, being able to revert back to what I did here is going to benefit you at this company here. And you can also utilize it with your DD-214 to create a resume. By the way, it's pretty neat. Like you can say, ChatGPT, please make my resume, and just put all this, just upload it, a document, and bam, it spits out a very basic one, but it gives you a shell, and you want to make sure that it's a scannable resume now, because almost every single employer is scanning resumes, looking for keywords that identify the job that you're applying for. For instance, if I'm a former military police officer and investigator, and I'm trying to get a corporate position, I'm going to want to tailor those skills that I had inside military police work that might translate over to this corporate position that has nothing to do with law enforcement. I'm good with de-escalating situations, good with customer service, good with Microsoft Office, good with report writing, good with note taking, right? These are things that you do in this skill over here, but you're not arresting people over here. So you have to really cut and paste the skill sets from one job that doesn't transform into the job that you're applying for, but the ChatGPT can help you with that.
This kind of goes back to the expectation and mindset, is that once you're in that civilian career, the career progression is also different. In the military, it's very structured. You know how it's going to go. I do X, Y, and Z. I'm due for promotion at this date as long as I pass my PT test and I get this score. It's so rigid. It's more difficult to navigate on the civilian side. You got to be having those conversations with your civilian employer about, telling them what your expectations for a career are. And if you're not sure how to do that, because all of your experience has been in the military, you can use AI as a tool to help you shape that conversation.
Speaking of promotions, you have to talk about reviews. We're used to getting evaluations every year in the military. A lot of times when you become an E5 and above, you are going to be writing your own, and then you're going to have your supervisor sign off on them, and wham, bam, that's it. Well, in civilian life, your supervisor is going to maybe do a 30-day review, a 60-day review, a 90-day review, and a 1-year review. And the way that civilians do it are completely different than the way we do it.
We've talked a lot about AI and just the possibilities with it. I want to lean a little bit on your background supporting veterans with addiction.
Yes.
Talking about what are some resources that can help service members, veterans, and their family members who are maybe like right there in the middle of dealing with addiction. Maybe they don't realize they're dealing with it yet, but understanding that there's a lot of resources that are available for them. Sometimes it's just about knowing what they are and how they can get to them.
So the VA is a big one. You do definitely need to go to your nearest VA hospital and find out what resources they offer in your community, because each VA clinic and hospital is very different in the amount of things that they offer based on the location throughout the United States. Places like Avalon Action Alliance, who have TBI clinics all over, they're partnered with everybody. That's a great place to go for getting scans. And they'll also help with PTS and all the other things. And they'll actually help connect you to your local VA office with whatever they find and the treatments that they need to give you. The other thing is Warrior Hearts. They fly their people there that need help. They have a great program for sobriety there. Avalon actually also does sobriety as well. We have Recovery for Life here in Virginia Beach, who has a veteran outreach. They have PTS, mental health, they have sobriety, they have housing. They do a lot of events together. He sets up events, golf tournaments here locally that raise a lot of money for Recovery for Life. It's a nonprofit. We have retreats for the veterans in some of the houses. And then we also have galas where everybody gets dressed up and we go and have a great time together, and we bring a whole lot of monetary supporters into the mix for that.
One question I would have is for the individual who is potentially going through addiction right now, how can they address that? Maybe not picking a specific resource right away, but just like in that personal journey as they're going through it, what's that first step that they should really do?
With veterans, if they have a security clearance, I recommend that they get help before they get in trouble. Whether it's being a urinalysis at work or maybe a DUI or something while they're out in town, if you know that you have a problem and they know, they have to decide if they want to get help, because most of the time it's family members that want them to get help, but they have to voluntarily want to go get help. You can't drop a family member off at a sobriety place. They're not going to accept them unless they want to be there. So if they're involuntary, there's nothing you can do. You have to wait till they get to that place where they're ready. But when they are ready, it's super important if you're military and you have a clearance and you have a job, maybe you want to get into a contract position and you want to keep your clearance, it's super important that you get help voluntarily before you get into trouble or get a urinalysis. And that's because they have laws that protect our military for voluntarily getting help. And now after the fact, it's a little bit harder, and there's a lot of legal processes, and if it even can happen. But I highly recommend that if you want to keep your position or you want to be able to continue working in the field you're in, just get help. You're better off getting help. You're better off getting a peer coach that's on a 24/7 line. Go to a 12-step meeting. Start bonding with people that, and I would also say change the people you're hanging out with. If you're hanging out with people that are constantly drinking or doing drugs or putting you in a place where you feel peer pressure to go hang out, it's time to change that circle of friends. And it's because the mindset that they have is not the mindset that you need in order to succeed.
There's this thing that we've talked about a couple times about a veteran being rough around the edges. And I would say when you're dealing with matters of addiction, that is not the time to not be rough around the edge, to address it directly.
You have to be very direct, and sometimes it's helpful to have another person with you as well that might know of the situation. The more people that can come together in love and directness, the better. But at the same time, though, that veteran has to want to come forward, and that's usually the biggest problem, and it has to do with stigma.
I try to avoid the stigma that every veteran gets out and they're an alcoholic. I do think it's important to address the realities of that there's exposure to alcohol. There's a lot of stress where alcohol become a relief for it. I also don't want to shy away from the fact that there are issues with it as well. It's that balancing act of understanding, or perhaps a better way to look at it is there's a respect that has to be given to alcohol and understanding like what it can do to other addictions. Maybe it's not alcohol, maybe it's the prescription drugs that you were given while you're in the military. It's about understanding that those warning labels are there for a reason. The addiction things, that the resources that exist, they're there because we recognize as a community that if not given the proper respect, it's easy to fall down into the hole that addiction really can be. And once you're in there, it's hard to come out of. Probably the word where I'm thinking a little bit more, because I too try to avoid stigma, but I do want to talk a little bit about community and the value of community as a veteran resource. How can veterans help find their community to help them, not just with addiction, but with the whole career transition process?
When we hit on isolation earlier, and I think it's super important. If you get out of the military and you say you live in Iowa in the middle of nowhere, right? Try to find your VA hospital. Try to find a nonprofit that you want to connect with. Try to find a VFW, American Legion, anything that you're like. We have, so out in Hopewell, Virginia, in the middle of nowhere, they have one giant, beautiful VFW, and they have one of the biggest fundraising in there. There's so much to do over there. And I went to visit it the other day and I was just blown away. Like, we're in Virginia Beach where we have tons of stuff here, right? But I've never seen a VFW like the one in Hopewell, Virginia. And I'm sure that there's tons of them all over the United States that I need to hit and see, but they had such a great community in there. They're all ages, all eras were in there. My favorite part is like, hanging out with, World War II vet or a Vietnam vet, and then having like a Desert Storm vet. And then you have this generation of military, like they're all having that, what is it, $1.25 beer or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like that,
Yep.
but it's so cool because even back when my grandfather was, a veteran of World War II, he used to take me to VFW and they had 25-cent beers back then. A lot of things haven't changed, just the price has, but
Yeah.
there's still that same community over there, and they have really great dinner nights and themes. They have activities. They all get together for all the military holidays, and you can definitely find a VFW or an American Legion somewhere. There's so many resources out there that can help connect you as well with nonprofits in your area. Like I said, the Department of Veteran Services in every state has a list of their local state locations too. And also they have online groups too. So they're setting up like meet groups online for different types of themes. They have a female veteran group. They have, male veteran group. They have special ops. They have all the different things that you can connect with on Zoom if you can't meet in person. I also wanted to do a little shout out to Semper Fi America Funds, because they're also a place that you can contact, and they will provide you with all kinds of different resources, and sometimes paid for as well, if they need something, whether it's medical, mental health, all kinds of things. Just look up their website. They have tons of nurses in every single area that you can think of, and they can help you in any region.
These are all fantastic resources to help veterans build that community. Anything else that you might recommend? Maybe stuff that they wouldn't necessarily consider like as a center?
There's tons of nonprofits that help with, giving them a ride to where they need to go. It could be a plane flight, could be a train ride, it could be an Uber gift card. There's lots of dog programs all over the United States. I know that Warrior Hearts has a dog program, and we also have a Mutts program here in this area where we have highly trained individuals that train these dogs to be service dogs, and they're amazing. I've met many of the dogs and owners over here in this area, and I can tell you that they had all the puppies in all of their kennels lined up in like 15 straight. They're all napping at the same time, and they're all up at the same time. They're all being trained at the same. It's so adorable. It's the cutest thing I've ever seen. But they are the most well-mannered puppies. They pick the best breeders for these dogs, and they're just such great companions. And the ones that I've met that are the matured ones that have been assigned out, they are so bonded to their veteran, in such a great way. And honestly, like my dogs, I have 2 pugs. They're very badly behaved. They're not service dogs, but I would say that just owning a pet, whether it's a service dog or not, or a cat or whatever is, you're into, bearded dragons, I don't know, but having an animal to care for when you are in an isolated area where you have to reach out to make friends, or you have to find groups to belong to, having a pet is one of the best therapies out there that not only forces you to bond with something inside your home, but you're now responsible and accountable to getting up, taking it for a walk, making sure it's cared for, right? You're not inside yourself. You also have to step outside yourself when there's something out there. And they just provide so much attention and affection that it's really hard for me not to have a dog. I love like coming home every day and being around my animals. So I feel like they give you a lot of therapy, even if they're just napping on your lap. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And the amount of veterans I've seen their life impacted for the better by not always a service animal, but just by having a dog or a cat or a pet where they're able to have that connection with, that there is a healing factor there that's undeniable. Let's go into your next 2 words. I want to talk about camaraderie and loss, and I kind of want to combine these together because there's such a sense of camaraderie when you're in the military, and we talk about staying connected when you get out of the military. But also, it's important to note there's also this big sense of loss that veterans feel when they get out of the military because they're removed from that military veteran community, and it's harder to have that camaraderie. So let's dive into these 2 words a little bit.
So I had a couple different types of transformations when I got out of the military. It's my new word for transition, because I really hate the word transition. I feel like we're not actually getting anywhere if we're always in transition. So I like to say transformation, because I am transitioning, but I'm growing. So I'm going to move like a butterfly, right? So I would say when I was first military, and then I became a married dual military. That was very different. Going from single to dual military married, to getting out of the military and being a military spouse in an entirely different group of women that I was used to. So going from active duty women and friends and, my guy coworkers to strictly hanging out with military spouses, which in the beginning was a little rough for me because very different mindsets there. Let's just be honest. Like, I know what their husbands do for a living. I've worked alongside them. I've gone out and to weird places. I know what's out there, and they're just kind of like guessing or gossiping about certain things or asking me questions that I don't want to answer or, and I feel like the oddball out most of the time in a military spouse group. I don't feel that way with my fellow veterans of male or female descent, but even to this day, I'm very careful about what I say because the military mindset and then trying to transition it over into a military spouse mindset, it was really hard for me because I'm not used to sitting around waiting for my spouse to come home from a deployment. I was actually out there doing a lot of that stuff, right? That transition was hard, and the mindset, the camaraderie was lost because I didn't have any of these bonds with the military spouses that I had with my fellow active duty and veterans. And then I felt a loss there. I was just uncomfortable at the time. So I wasn't really sure how to behave in that group because that's not the group that I was used to. And that's pretty much like transitioning out of the military feels that way, whether it's into the military spouse organization. After a while, they all accepted me, or most of them. And, we eventually all became very tight, had my own little tight military spouse community. They're very accepting. And I think I just had a preconceived notion or an expectation that was not correct. And over time, I had to correct that, just like we will when we go into civilian corporate America. And it's very different. And then you go from having a career and knowing what to do every day to then becoming a parent full time at home. And that's very strange, even as a mother, because I was used to dividing my day up to military and momming, right? And now I'm a homeschool mom full time at home, and I don't have people that are listening to me when I tell them to do stuff, right?
Yeah.
We all know that as parents, how that works, right? So there's that. And then I have to reach out to a new resource, military spouses, which I wasn't one before, and now I am one. And they also know I'm a veteran. So I'm sure there's preconceived notions, right, on both sides of the coin that we have to work through. And over time you do. And then, you find your circle of friends and your outreach that you use when you need something on deployment and they need you, and it works out. But it does take a lot of perseverance, and it takes a lot of patience and again, embracing the suck sometimes. I mean, it really does. That translates out of the military as well. So the camaraderie is lost, but you have to build a new camaraderie. It's almost like a death in a way. When you leave the military, you don't realize you're going to go through that. It's like the stages of grief, that you're angry, you're sad, you got anxiety. You go through all the different things until you get your footing again and you create a community for yourself like you had in the military. It's just a different community. But I always tend to have a lot of veterans in my community.
That really brings up this good point about like understanding like your identity for yourself in that period of transition. That's something that many veterans talk about as something that they feel they lose a little bit. Was that your experience as well?
Yeah, and in the beginning, I went straight from military to stay-at-home homeschooling mom in a foreign country, and I was lonely. I was lost. Lots of deployments, and I thought about it, and I didn't have time. I didn't have any time to transition or adapt or to deal with any of it back then because I was focused on children. But now my kids are older, and guess what's happening now? I now have to deal with those things because I can't be distracted by them anymore. I'm actually constantly setting goals for myself. I try to learn how to do something new in corporate society, a new marketing technique, or how can I get better at communication, weight loss. I wanted to do some, physical things for myself to make myself more marketable, all the different things. And also too, I'm at an age, I'm 52, and I really just want to be myself with whoever I'm speaking to. I want to treat the other person like a human being. I don't care if you're the governor. I don't care if you're the guy picking up my trash. We all matter. And I think we should have learned that during COVID, where when somebody in our team stops doing something, it hurts everybody. It doesn't matter if you're the leader or if you're the person, over here, the teacher that can't teach in school anymore, right? What I've learned is everybody is important. Everybody has a purpose. And I really just want to be able to talk to each person on the same level. So if there's a problem with the veteran community, or if there's something that needs to be adjusted, changed, or improved, I speak to any leader on either side of the aisle about veteran issues as if I'm talking to you. I mean, it doesn't, to me, it's like, hey, if I pretend to be something I'm not in front of them, then I'm really not doing any service to our veteran community. And if I come across the conflict in any way, I use ChatGPT to help me figure out what I need to say next without having to use any cuss words. But yeah, and I've talked to a lot of veterans, and they're all starting to use that. So it's a very beneficial tool across the board for a lot of people for the same reasons. So yeah, I think it's becoming popular.
We've talked a lot about, replacing the word transition with transform, because it's a transformative part of your life. But I think this also leads really well into your next word, and that's mission. Talking about that, your mission in the military may no longer be with the military, but that doesn't mean your mission's over. So let's talk about that final word that you chose, mission.
Yeah, I've never really been able to transition, but I have been transforming, and I've been improving myself and adding on more skills to what I already have. So we're building like a building, right? We're building. I really like the mission mindedness that I have when I go to perform a task. I'm methodical, I'm very organized, and I'm researched, and I am resourceful. So I know that I got those skills from the military. I don't want to get rid of those because I'm not military anymore. I want to take those and apply them to my civilian life. So now I'm going to add that mission. I'm going to make it better because I'm going to take what I've learned, I'm going to apply it to civilian life, and I'm going to take these new skills I'm learning in civilian life, and I'm going to combine them, and I'm going to be a hybrid now.
Any other thoughts for veterans, family members, service members going through career transition, or even maybe it's a veteran who transitioned 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, just in like closing thoughts, it going through your entire journey, the words you've offered to help them, closing thoughts for them.
Don't give up, find your people, start a community wherever you're at, don't isolate yourself. Make sure you use talk therapy when you need it, get help when you need it. Don't let the stigma ruin you, because even though we hate that word, there's a positive stigma about alcohol, and there's a negative stigma about drug use. But let's just be honest, like we can take them both to an extreme, and then we can't return without help. So you can't keep going in that direction and not be able to reach out for help if you want to get better, improve, heal, and grow. There's no shame in your game. If you're struggling with PTS, suicidal tendencies, or sobriety issues, it is now the time to go get help, get out there and do it, because your life could be so different 6 months to a year from now, and that you won't even be able to recognize it, and it'll be for the better. I don't want to see any veterans out there struggling, but I know that, we don't all have the resources that we need at the time we need them. So if you see me on LinkedIn, please reach out to me. I would love to connect. And if you have if you need a resource, if I don't know of one, I'll find you one. I have lots of connections that can help me find you the resource that you need. I would like to do a little shout out to Commissioner Chuck Ziegler of the Department of Veteran Services, Virginia Veteran Network, who appointed me as an ambassador for the Virginia Veteran Network. I'm really grateful for that appointment. He's done an amazing job setting up our resources for our state of Virginia. He's constantly moving every day from one event to another, doing all kinds of different veteran programs, events, and just educating everybody. He's definitely somebody that knows the veteran, cares about the veteran, and the whole state of Virginia can see that. So I really hope that we get all the other states around us starting to create their Department of Veteran Services to emulate what we're doing here in Virginia, because we have the most resources. We have close to 1 million veterans in the state of Virginia, and 200,000 of them are female veterans. So, we have the jobs here, we have the bases here, we have the government contracts here. So we house tons and tons of veterans in the state, and I'm very proud of the veteran network that we have here and all the ways that we are helping veterans. And I'm also very excited that we have recovery groups like Recovery for Life with Dr. Hardy. because having people that have that heart for veterans, even if they're not a veteran, but they care about us, that means more to us than they know.
Well, Kelly, thank you so much for sharing your journey and all of these different resources to help veterans, service members, and their family members with career transition. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
This is Veteran CEO Magazine, where veterans lead the way.